afternoon, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Salvador Camara, and I'm part of the team at NovaSV Executive Education. For today's webinar session, we would like to present you to Filipa Breda Fonseca. That's going to talk about why organizational safety matters in times of crisis. But first, let me tell you one thing. There's this toolbar below on your Zoom session that you can use to make questions that Filipa will answer lately on this webinar. Also, I would like to tell you that you can visit our website, roleplay.novesb.pt, and find other webinar sessions that are scheduled to the following days. Well, how about this guest speaker of today? I would like to present Filipa. Filipa, with a PhD in management from NovaSP and visiting PhD student at University of Oxford, she's a researcher and assistant professor at NovaSP. Her main areas of interest and research include health management, operations and management, medical errors, and security in organizations, among others. She's also an associate member of NovaSP Health Economics and Management Knowledge Center since 2015, and is one of the two responsibles for the post-graduation in health management at NovaSP Executive Education. So I would like you to present to Filipa on this topic of why organizational safety matters in times of crisis.
Hello everyone. Everything perfect? Okay. And thank you for coming. For me, it's a pleasure to be here doing my presentation in these webinar sessions because nowadays all of us have a role to play, and thank you. And I'm very thankful to Executive Education and for inviting me to discuss and present this topic that is so relevant for healthcare organizations. So, why I choose this topic? Why are these topics so relevant for me? So when we talk about organizational safety, we relate this with high-performance team, namely is the foundation of high-performing teams, and it creates a space where people feel secure and safe while to speak up and be themselves. And this matters in times of crisis and make a difference in times of crisis. So for this reason, I developed this presentation, and the presentation is developed and organized in three main topics. So the first topic is about organizational safety and why organizational safety is a challenge in this time of crisis. Another thing that I will explore is getting organizational safety, and also how do I encourage organizational safety in times of crisis. And after that, we will have the discussion of, maybe 2 or 3 main questions about this topic. So, in addition to what I mentioned before, I want to clarify that I have been a researcher and a student and a PhD student of this topic of errors and failures and fears for more than 9 years, I think. And I'm doing research and several projects in this area. And I'm watching people in hospitals. I talk to people in hospitals. I observe people in healthcare services doing ordinary things. So I talk with physicians, with staff, with nurses. And one of the most important things that I learned in hospitals in this observation process is people don't like to fail, and people not admit failures. People are in constantly denial all the time, okay? So people want to feel secure, I think. But on the other hand, I think also that people want to work in safety organizations. That is my idea. So organizational safety, I think, is a challenge in times of crisis. So a time when our models of the world change by, the hour, by the moment, the learning capacity of people is the difference between adaptation and paralysis all the time. Adaptation and paralysis all the time, yes. And in times of crisis and pandemic, sometimes we really don't know what to expect and how to behave in healthcare systems and hospitals. So the point is, the COVID and pandemic has put professional healthcare services, leaders and managers, healthcare professionals under pressure all the time. They never experienced before, of course. And I think that the average person is dealing with a sense of, disorientation, for instance, closer to warm time than work day. And I think, and we talk with several healthcare professionals, that fear that is shared is listened in hospitals at the moment. So, when you have big failures, when you have big mistakes, you try to avoid those failures all the time. And why? I think that is because we live in a VUCA world. Do you know what is a VUCA world? The VUCA world is a world that is volatile, uncertain, it's complex and ambiguous too. So when the situation is uncertain, human instincts and basic management training can cause managers to delay actions all the time, and to downplay the threat until the situation becomes more clear. And these kind of things make people feel anxious all the time and taking the wrong steps always in times of crisis. So I think that the point right now, we now have to work a little harder, I think, to share what we are thinking, to ask questions to healthcare managers and physicians and nurses. And I think it's important that the operational work is making us realize we have to be more open for one hand and more proactively from the other hand. So I think that's important, sharing, ask questions, explain our ideas, make some concerns, and also share what we are thinking. Why? Because we just overhead what's happening in the next cubicle. So my opinion is that this pandemic crisis is certainly a threatful way to learn and to move in new behaviors in healthcare organizations. So I will talk with you with failure, with stigma. When we talk of potential causes of errors, we talk about embrace hide. From my experience, what I say that is failure is not all bad. But on the other hand, I think that failure is not all good either. So the point is, let's face it. Let's face the failures, okay? So here we have a picture about the potential causes of errors and failures in healthcare services. I will show you all these points. Are conclusions of my research, my PhD research, and several papers that I'm constructing at the moment. And I will put here several points that show you the potential causes of errors and failures in healthcare services. And what I concluded is that potential causes and failures are related with incompetence, with negligence, with complexity of the system, sometimes with uncertainty and with maybe deliberate validation. But we have a problem here. Why? Because companies do not believe in people's failures and running out they're trying to make things upon purpose. So we have a problem here because the gap between what logic and rationality dictate, which is good and bad, good and not so good. So we have a gap here. So the point it's to blame the gap. Okay, so in my opinion, you have to close this gap. So if you don't close the gap, we'll have here a problem. So we'll never get people comfortable with each is intelligent failure, in my opinion. So the point is failure in an intelligent way. So it's important. Why it's important? It's important to celebrate and acknowledge the errors and failures, I think. Let me show you an example that is very, very, very simple and explain what I'm saying about what it is a failure example. This is a practical example about the Chief Scientific Office at Eli Lilly, that is a pharmaceutical company, and this chief scientific officer instituted a ritual called failure parties. So what happens here in this company, in the failure party? So the company share these failures with employees, with teams, and celebrate these failures. Okay, so this is a good example about what I'm saying. And we have here three main important points about this point that I'm explaining here, why it might actually be a good idea. And we have here three simple things about this. And the first point is that our failures are welcome all the time. So what I think is create this culture to help people know that their failures are welcome. Another thing is if you have a party, people show up. Okay, just like an example that I said, they heard about failures that prevents the unfortunate outcome. And the third thing that I think that is very, very, very important, it's to promote these little rituals in companies, okay? So it's put this in a simple way, not in a dramatical way. Make this kind of things more acceptable, more simple, and more practical, okay? So let me show you here the three main points that I consider very, very, very important in times of crisis and to fail well. We have here three main points. The first point is reduce preventable failures. We have in the organizations, we have here the training and support the teams. Another thing is to anticipate and mitigate complex failures to the best of our ability, of course. And just like I said, it's important in healthcare services, promote good ideas, promote smart hypotheses with teams, with healthcare managers, and make that happen, okay? So the point here is promote the intelligent failures in companies. So, what about getting organizational failures? So, in my opinion, people free full self to work is people that is free to ask questions, to ask concerns, to make mistakes, okay, in the organization. So, in my opinion, and for me, is absolutely crucial that people speak up, full stop. People works in a complex, uncertain, unpredictable organizations. But the point here, it's important to people to talk each other openly with managers, with the teams. So, in my opinion, it is a challenge to creating a safety environment without fear in hospitals, in healthcare services organizations. It is a challenge to create this. So I will show you 3 important points to explore and explain why is so important creating a safety environment without fear in hospitals. And the first point that I realize that is very important is adding meaning of the work, is framing the work. So it's important to remind people of the nature of the work. Why I work here? Why is this work so important for me? Why is this organization, this company so important for me? Is it or not? So adding meaning of the work is for me the first point to creating a safety environment without fears in hospitals. A second point that I consider that it is very important here also is ask people direct questions. Okay, I call this the model fallibility. So the point is I'm letting you know that I'm a fallible human being. I need your help. I may miss something. So ask people direct questions. On the other hand, I think that is important also invite inputs in people. So asking questions just like, what do you think? What did you see? What did you solve this process? What do you improve this process? So the point is ask people direct questions to create this to create this safety environment without fears. And finally, another point that I consider crucial in this point of safety is embrace messengers, okay? So thank people. When people speak up, when people offer you ideas in the organization, so thank them when people speak. And also acknowledge and make with them a positive experience with your team and with your team and people that works with you in your company. So another point that I consider very crucial when we talk about organizational safety, it's about that organizational safety is not nice. It's not nice. And why? We could say that it's not nice because I will tell you what I really think, and people don't like it. People don't like it if you tell people what do you really think about this or about that. So you have to have the permission to get it wrong, to make mistakes, of course, okay? So we fail and grow all the time in the organization. So safety is not nice for that reasons. And what I see in my research is that people are scared to speak up all the time. So it's because this. So organizational safety, it's not nice. It's not nice. Okay, so here I have a list of psychological safety killers. That is what not to do with teams and employees. So we have here basically points that what not to do with teams. And we have here several points. For example, comparing them to their peers and or spread rumors or explain how they are wrong, okay? Or, for example, what were you thinking? Break confidentiality. So we have here several points, and there is a list of several studies that I collected, and that are very, very important, that what not to do with teams and with people in healthcare organizations. So assign blame, your fault. So it's several points that are very, very, very important when we talk about safety killers. So let me show you also, and finally, let me show you several points. How do I encourage organizational safety in times of crisis? Because we have here several points that are very, very important when we explore and encourage this organizational safety in this time. So, the first point that I consider very important to explore is, for example, a start to understanding the basic emotions of the teams. Okay, start to understand these basic emotions. That is, for example, remind yourself what emotions are important and maybe what are the ways in which they may manifest in these new times of crisis. So take this into account. So start to understanding the basic emotions of your team. And another thing that I consider very important in what concerns to encourage the organizational safety in times of crisis is communicate with transparency. So communication, it's not so easy, not so simple. I think communication, it is crucial to convey your message in a way that people can understand. It's not easy. For example, in healthcare services, we have to communicate bad news all the time. So communication bad news is a thankless task. So here, I think that is very important to facilitate this participation, okay? And it takes wisdom and some courage, I think, to understand that communicating with transparency is a vital antidote to the risk in the organizations, okay? Another thing that I consider that is important to encourage this organizational safety in times of crisis is, for example, respond productively to missteps. And we could do this in several ways. For example, listen people, okay? Acknowledge them, oriented everyone towards problem solving, for example. Why? Because in time of crisis, it's important to stay focused on the goals, I think, and also look ahead to continuing solving the next and pressing problems, for example. Why? Because of the novelty of the pandemic system failure, for example, problems will arise regardless of how a manage act, okay? So it's important in times of crisis, again, to listen, acknowledge, and oriented everyone toward problem solving. And another thing that I think that is very, very, very important, and to finish all these topics about these points, how to encourage organizational safety in times of crisis, it's, for example, engage in constant updating and manage with a clear vision. Okay, so managing in time of crisis is manage uncertainty, I think. So it's important to, I don't know, fast moving crisis means making oneself available to feel what it is like to be in another shoes. Okay, so I think here is important to live and manage empathy, and steadiness here is required. Why? Because managers must constantly update their understanding of their priorities. So the main point here is the engage in constant updating and manage with a clear vision. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing with me this presentation, and we could discuss all these points, and I could ask the several questions that you have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Filipa. What a nice and presentation, even because of the purpose for nowadays meeting. Actually, we have some questions, probably related to the specific moment we are going through.
Okay.
The first one, how do we encourage organizational safety? Specifically.
Okay. I think that the one important thing is how do I start building organization safety? Okay. And I think that we could develop here three main important points. So the first point is, for example, start with a leader. So the most senior people in teams or organization must set the stage to frame the work and emphasize the purpose, for example. So start with a leader. Another thing that I think that is very, very important, it's, for example, invite participation. So leaders and managers must practice hiring to encourage people to challenge beliefs and establish several practice in the organizations. And another point that I consider very important is response, for example, productively. Okay, so it's, for example, listen to people ideas, appreciate their inputs all the time in times of crisis, and maybe desdramatize this kind of errors and failures. So I think we have here these points here. Another point, Salvador, that I think that could be interesting here, it's encourage the organizational safety. For example, increase self-awareness, feedback, and trust are crucial in nowadays and in this type of pandemic and crisis in healthcare services. Another thing, it's also could be facilitate participation. For example, examples, designing meetings to increase participation and openness. For example, provide each team member a turn to speak up. And for example, design team rituals, for example. So rituals are an effective way to drive meaningful change. So they accelerate collaboration, creativity, and trust with healthcare managers and physicians and nurses and all the system.
Thank you, Filipa. What a nice answer. Full of examples. We can enrich our role for the next days, definitely. We have here another question, meaning in a time where healthcare is under pressure to provide correct answers, how can we celebrate failure without failing our mandate as healthcare provider?
Okay, it's not easy. My presentation explain a little bit this kind of things, but the point here, I think, it's creating this organizational safety and psychological safety in organization. Just like I said, framing the work, model fallibility, and embrace messengers. These 3 points, I think, they are very, very important in this type of nowadays. Okay, and another thing that I didn't explain and that is important to answer this question is try to measure this psychological and organizational safety. Okay, we could do lots of things to manage this. We have, for example, surveys to measure all these variations with surveys measures to illustrate robustness of organizational safety with several questions. So this is a good point to start and to develop these points in healthcare organizations, of course.
Thank you, Felipe. I think we still have some minutes to answer the last one.
Okay.
How do we start building an organizational safety nowadays in our companies?
Okay. I put 3 points here. How do I start a building organization safety in organization? So the first point is start with a leader, okay, and I explain later what it is. So the most senior people in team or organization must set the stage to frame the work and emphasize the purpose. The second point is invite participation. Okay, so leaders and managers must practice inquiry to encourage people to challenge beliefs and practice. And finally, respond productively. So listen to people's ideas. Just like I said.
Felipe, many thanks. It was such a nice webinar. I would like you to thank you, of course. So we will end up here. Let me just tell you, all the participants, that we still have more webinars coming. Please have a look at our website and feel free to join our free webinars. Thank you so much.
Thank you.